that will cause increase in global warming? Is it grown in a way that would ensure that you can go to the next slide, please. I'm at the next slide. Is it grown in a way that um, people can reliably get the same? Yes, thank you. This slide, the same type of produce, the way that they got it 10 years from now. These are the things that are really driving the key trends. This is what we've seen that as is responsible for how consumers are really reacting. So you find out that people are asking for things like organic food, things that were not something that used to be a major a major concern before now, but now that started to take in, gain traction, and even in our own, country, you find people now starting to ask specifically for organic produce, especially when it comes to cultural crops, fruits, vegetables, right? People are starting to wake up to horticultural organic products. At the same time, too, people are asking about questions like, is he healthy? What chemicals were used in its production? How was it produced? And all of those different things like that. This represents a major, major significant shift because before people did not used to pay attention to. Yes, they knew they had food on their table, but there was no emphasis on how it was produced. There was no emphasis on who produced it. There was no emphasis on how it was even transported to their table. Now, there's also growing interest in local and traceable food because I'm sure there was a brief period this year where people were starting to complain about cholera and all of those types of things. Now, some of this could have easily been translated by food, the food that I eaten. Maybe it was this the water in the cleaning process was probably contaminated, and so it contaminated the food, and people that ate it, were susceptible to certain type of disease, either cholera or something like that. Now people are starting to really understand that food is not just about going to buy it. They are trying to ask questions: is this tomatoes from Jos or is it tomato from Cameroon? You know, and especially now these days that like we can relate, the prices of produce are starting to tell. There's a significant escalation with price of produce, and it's affecting people how they think about their food. For instance, I'm sure that you've all seen the latest trend now that tomatoes is very expensive. People are trying out new things like cucumber stew, cucumber soup, watermelon soup, carrot soup. You've started to see a whole lot of things. I think one of the major factors that is responsible for this trend is also the socio-economic factors as well. The rising cost of food products that cause people to be very creative and very sensitive about their food. And then there's also the shift towards convenience and online shopping. Um, I don't want to overflog this issue, but I know most of us on this call would have at some point in time, in the last 6 months, made some purchase online, like some online purchase. You know, you've probably purchased something on Jumia, you've probably purchased something from Instagram. So does food purchase also go? Even though food purchase is one of the last that would catch up to this, convenience online shopping experience trend, is still catching up significantly. You'll find out that, the likes of, um, um, you know, um, no longer Jumia Foods right now, but Child Deck, are actually helping consumers really access food. They even have a grocery shopping section. Price Pally as well are doing some sort of significant. And you find out that people would rather place their orders online, all right, with the assurance again that it is sustainable food, it is grown in a way that is traceable, and also try to find a way to, definitely make those purchases online. Another thing that is really another key trend is the rising awareness of ethics and environmental concerns. Now, Before now, food is just food, but now it's more than that. Food is now about our environment. It affects us directly. Um, you know that there's certain chemicals that you use in your food, in the production, and then by the time you have harvested and there's an erosion and it runs off into the local water supply system, it's going to pollute the environment. And we don't want that anymore as consumers. Consumers are really becoming very educated and sophisticated. And it's high time that I mean, as producers, as aggregators, as value chain players are able to catch up with this particular trend and go forward. Then the next slide, the impact on the commodity market from all of these major key trends. The impact that they have on the commodity market is that there is an increase in demand, that might not be have been apparent to some people, but is still not the less overwhelming. So I know that in the recent months, people have been, especially like farmers, have been getting a lot of requests for organic produce, and pe- even farmers that were previously not, trying to do anything to improve on their production practices are now trying to play catch up. Another thing about the impact of, especially on the social economic end, is that farmers are finding it now that they actually have a say in the production and in the marketing of their produce, especially now that produce have become um, very expensive, especially in Nigeria. We found out that farmers are now by themselves taking their products to major cities in across the country. Farmers before would wait for probably an aggregator or a market person to probably come to their farm, of take their product from them, and probably go to the market to sell. But all of these trends are now forcing farmers to become business people. They are forcing farmers to become marketers of their product. So, Jesus.
Mr. Adetiloye, we can't hear you anymore. Are you there? Hello, Mr. Adetiloye. If you can hear me, please. We can't hear you anymore. I guess it's the network. Let's just give him some time to, rejoin. Okay, Mr. Adetiloye, I noticed you've just joined. Okay, you can go ahead.
Wow. My apologies. Um, I'm still on the previous slide. No, on the previous slide. Yes, that's yes. All right. So, um, I'll just explain to us about my, again, apologies for the connection bridge. I just explained to us how farmers have become marketers of their product. This in this shift has actually forced most farmers out. I dare say that this socioeconomic impact on our food system is probably a good thing, if in and we might only see that good and that benefit in hindsight, in the sense that more farmers are starting to think like business people. Unlike the previous way when an aggregator will come over to your farm to take produce. Now, in the recent months, farmers themselves are now taking the, the the initiative and taking produce to market. They're starting to develop new ways to actually market their produce as before then. And farmers do not have less choices now than they have. They have more choices than before now, and that's actually a good thing. There's also a shift in pricing and supply chain dynamics. Just to emphasize that um, these days, if you were a food catering company, you probably would have been sourcing your produce from maybe your local market, or probably your local aggregator. But now there's now a more there's a shift um towards you know companies reaching out directly to farmers. Yes, there are now things like contract farming that are starting to take place. Very, very popular now in places like Plateau and Bauchi rather, where people then say, "Oh, I want you to farm for us. I want you to meet this particular expectation. I want you to make this particular specification because we have a market that is ready for it." So there is obviously, and this is going to definitely affect a lot of the way produce is moved around, so that it will reduce the time produce gets to travel from the farm to the final destination. And these are some of the major trends that are impacting the food commodity market. There's also new opportunities for new niche products. Um, so, for instance, I have noticed recently that instead of selling, niche products like, for instance, um, strawberries right now. From at least from our place in Jos, there's a lot of strawberries now that is starting to gain production. I dare say that in the last 5 years, the strawberry production output in Plateau has even quadrupled. There is niche products are finding their way into the market. There's also because of contract farming, there's now need for specialization. So there are some farmers that grow only purple iceberg lettuce. That's what they do. They only focus on purple iceberg lettuce and do not go beyond that. And in before now, they will have struggled to get markets for their produce. But because people are changing, there's a need for sustainability on the table. Everybody is starting to pay attention, and it's actually dramatically affecting, you know, the market. Please, the next slide. So now, um, how we also fresh is reacting to some of this. We're really putting in a few things in place, but I wouldn't really want to dwell so much on this because again, while implementing strict quality control with all of our farmers, we're trying to, as much as possible, be transparent about the information we put out there about their origins, or partnering with more farmers who can adhere to certain principles. Now, in how do we then approach the supply chain end of these things? Because it's one thing to farm, it's another thing to actually get it to market. um Please, the next slide, please. Hello, can you take it to the next slide, please? Hello, hi Former, please, are you there? Chioma, anyone?
I'm
We
sure
can
they
hear
can
you.
hear you. Ifeoma,
Okay, we're just asking us to get to the next slide so that our audience can get to see. Okay, no problem. All
I
right,
think
so
next.
now I want to address the concern about, from all of these things that we have pointed out, it's obvious to everybody that things have really changed dramatically on ground. Agriculture is no longer that unpopular, that very dirty sector. for people to play in. But then again, it still requires a lot of there are still major challenges in terms of supply chain, in terms of distribution, in terms of marketing, and in terms of you know logistics. Logistics is a major bottleneck. And how are we looking towards building a resilient supply chain? Because the trend is that it is said that today Nigerian population is over 220 million people, and that by 2050 it will have increased dramatically to 346 million people on this country, making us, I think, the third largest country in the world by that time. And how are we going to deal with these supply chain issues? Because what that means is that more food would actually need to be grown in the next 30 years than has ever been grown in the last 300 years. The meaning is that we need to be able to put in resilient supply chain in place. We need to be able to diversify sourcing to reduce risk. That's one thing that we need to do. So in Nigeria, we're very dependent on the Middle Belt region to produce our food for us. We were dependent on the Middle Belt to produce our food, and we will need to diversify that sourcing. Um, we would need to invest in localized regional food production system. We need to really improve our local ability and our comparative advantage locally. So and thankfully there are more variety of products that can now grow. I know that broccoli can now grow in Lagos as they can now grow in Jos. I know that we're starting to plant wheat locally in the country now to support our local um, demand and consumption, which is actually a good thing. So we need to really focus on diversifying our sources, not not one region would be producing food anymore. Every region now is supposed to take charge or should be able to contribute to the overall quota and ensure that we have a more resilient supply chain. We also need to invest in post-harvest infrastructure, and this is one key area that I've always advocated for in the last years, which is that if we have cold storage facilities, if we have pack houses that can actually attend to food products as they are harvested and put them in a pre-cooled environment for easy dispatch, number one, we will not lose food. Number two, we'll be able to extend the shelf life of our food product, and it will be overall more affordable for consumers. We would also be able to export food, which is a good thing for us because we will no longer have a we will no longer I'm still on the previous slide, please. We will no longer have any need um for relying on importation. We would then be able to export and generate revenues internally for our country. We also need to strengthen relationship with logistics service providers. Now, logistics is a major pain point for most people, both producers and consumers alike. Consumers would face logistics challenges in receiving items. Producers will face logistic challenges in trying to fulfill their goods or their products to their customers. Now, this logistics, we need to be able to work closer with logistics people. We're no longer in that time where we leave logistics people to handle their stuff and put all the blame with them. Now we need to be able to understand them. What are the major challenges that are causing all of this breakdown? Is it that we don't the value of what we pay them is not enough for them to maintain the system? One thing that we do as Awesome Fresh is that I think it has really helped us in terms of logistics is whenever we are trying to like fulfill a shipment to some particular regions, especially the most region, we have a sit down one-on-one with the logistics service provider. How much would it get you to take this there? Um, and the logistics can naively price it at so cap. But we obviously understanding that Logistics is not just only about taking your goods there, it's also about how the logistics service provider itself is thinking about returning. And so that it does not try to cut corner on you going because it knows it's going to come back empty. We try to support and bolster and give them allowances, extra gap that allows them to do what they're supposed to do. You also try to help them with route planning as well. Recently, I know that somewhere in down approaching Port Harcourt is blocked. We just helped our uh, service providers with that information that they will need to avoid that so that there is no access delay, in the route planning. There are also other technologies that we can also use to work with some of our logistics service providers, including remote tracking, which is also very important to be able to help you know what when and where you know an item is at any particular point in time. Is very critical and important in Nigeria at this stage right now, especially now that the cost of energy is high, plus fossil fuel is high, the cost of of produce is high. We cannot afford to waste anything anymore. Please, the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, the challenges and the opportunities are vast. The challenge that players currently face in the commodity market is the fact that there's volatility in the market. The market conditions are volatile. Today it's up, tomorrow is down. It's a bit, it can be unpredictable and very epileptic at times, and that's a major challenge. It does not really help to it doesn't really help in planning. It doesn't really help in this is a major barrier, for people who want to come in and standardize things. Another challenge is the limited access to finance and technology. Um, it is no news, especially for much of all the business people on this call, that the interest rates are high. I think it's somewhere around 6 to 7%, and that is not finance available for agricultural use. In fact, the finance that you likely get at that rate would ensure that you don't even move forward with your venture, because that finance can literally kill your business. And so what you're finding is that farmers are and a lot of people are facing very limited access to finance, and very limited access as well to technology. Well, there's been in terms of technology, there's been significant improvement over the years. There's now um, financial increase in financial inclusion. I know that more farmers now have access to more farmers, not all, more farmers now having access um, to being bankable, and that's obviously a good thing. But there's still a large infrastructural gap that we need to cover. And this infrastructural gap include things like road network. These are things that you and I cannot put in place, but actually affects us. For instance, the roads, across Nigeria, all has been deteriorating significantly. And then there's also insecurity and conflict as well. And these are some of the major challenges, because farmers can't go to the farm, they can't access their products, and even if they can access their product, conflicts will not allow them to be able to take it out of there. And what are the opportunities that we have? Number one, there's a growing demand for high quality sustainable food. That this particular point cannot be overemphasized. Our population is growing, not just only growing, our 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 ability to discern what we really want as a people is also actually growing as well. There's rising consumer awareness, and there's a willingness to pay more. There's actually a willingness to pay more in certain markets, maybe not all markets, but there's a certain percentage of the market that is growing, that is willing to pay a premium for produce. There is also the potential for innovation and value-added processing as well. And then there's also interest that's coming up from impact investors that want to put in investment to help, not just only support smallholder farmers, but also build strong and resilient food systems. So next slide.
Okay, I want to say something, Mr. Adetiloye. This webinar is
Yeah.
scheduled for an hour, and we already eaten into the time of those that will be asking questions. So,
Okay.
can we just try and round it up so that they can ask questions and then probably, go to their various businesses, because we told them it's an hour.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, my apologies for the glitches and all. I'll just run through it. Right? Excuse me. So in building is a sustainable food system, we have to invest in local production and we have to diversify our local food production and processing efforts. We have to empower our smallholder farmers in a way that they can produce sustainably. And at the same time, we have to work with other service providers, not just only farmers, but logistics service providers, supply chain um, people to ensure that we have a sustainable food system. Next slide, please. All right. So I've made the call for collaboration among stakeholders and also making that call for government policies that are favorable, especially in helping farmers access the right inputs that they at the right time. Next slide, please. In conclusion, there are just three major things that I like everybody to take here. Is that there's a significant shift and it's shifting towards sustainable food. Agribusiness needs to adapt to that trend to remain competitive. And we need to build a food system that is born out of collaboration and innovation to meet these our growing challenges and demand locally. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Adetiloye. Thank you for making our time to educate us more about the trends now in the commodity marketplace. Thank you so much. And one of the things I've learned is things have changed. People are asking questions, and for us to stay in tune, for us to stay in line, we also need to evolve. Things are changing, people are changing, people are asking questions. They want to know where their commodities are coming from, they want to know the source. A lot of things are actually changing in the agro space right now. I'm sure we all know that. So that's one of the things I've taken, and I'm so I'm grateful, I'm thankful for this opportunity. So I'm leaving for our audience. Please, you can now raise your hands, you can ask your questions, and our guest in the house can go ahead and respond. The floor is open now for questions, please. Okay, Mr. Akesha, you want to say something? You can go ahead, unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Hello. My question is, he said he mentioned about having offices in different states, and he also mentioned about having an office in Benue State. So here is my question: the address of the office in Benue State. Thank you.
Oh, I did not say having office. I said we have significant operations in Benue, Plateau, Bauchi, Gombe, and Adamawa. As we work with number of farmers in Benue, in Plateau, I forgot to also mention Nasarawa as well. We work. We don't have our main office. We are based in Jos, Plateau State. That's where our headquarters is. We work with a number of farmers across all of the states that I mentioned. Is it clear now?
Yeah, yes, it's clear. Thank you. If somebody wants to get any of the products, any of the vegetable or seed, how we